Vanessa with Lipson, and welcome to CAP's live drop-in class. Today I'm making self-blow sculptures. This is the sculpture that I already made. First, you'll need to cover your work surface with a wax paper. Secondly, you'll need about a cup of flour in a mixing bowl. Then you're going to add half a cup of salt to your mixture. And then you're going to want to use a mixing spoon to combine your dry ingredients. It looks pretty good. You just want to make sure that any clumps of salt have been minimized. Right now I'm going to slowly add my half cup of water. It's about room temperature. And then you just want to go ahead and mix it a little bit at a time. I've got my oven preheated to 200 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the temperature you're going to want to bake your sculpture at. You can also air dry it. It takes about 2 to 3 days to get a solid air dry sculpture out of one of these salt dough projects. This one's still warm from the oven. I also have a little dish of water off to the side to use to smooth some of the rough edges when I get to that point. At some point, you're going to want to start kind of kneading the dough together with your hands to make sure that it kind of gets to a good non-sticky but still very plastic consistency. And it looks like I may have added a little bit more flour. So I'm going to add a little bit more water. You can kind of add some more salt to make sure that you're not going to stick to your surface. This is getting pretty good. So the first thing I'm going to do is use my hands to press the dough down onto this wax paper surface. And then you don't want it to get too stuck to your surface, so it's a good idea to periodically kind of pick up your dough so it doesn't get like mashed into the paper. You're going to want a slab a little bit larger than your handprint. This is still a little bit sticky. I'm going to add some more flour. Oh, that's a lot better. To knead it properly, I'm kind of rolling it inward on itself. Alright, so that's pretty good. Now I'm going to kind of flatten it out with the palm of my hand. And again, I'm going to move the dough around so it doesn't stick to any one particular spot on the surface. That's about as thick as you want it, but to make it more of a consistent thickness and get rid of fingerprints and everything, I'm going to roll it. I made this rolling pin by cutting down a dowel rod. I like it because it's not too much bigger than my hand span. Some of the other rolling pins that you can use just seem like they're too big and bulky, and it's just like, why am I bumping my elbows around? Alright, so next you're going to want to kind of place your hand in the center of your slab and trace your handprint with a knife and just kind of cut it out. And you're going to put your scraps, your dough scraps, off to the side here. When I have younger students tracing their handprints, they tend to want to just trace where your hand makes contact rather than like actually getting the whole outline of your finger, so they end up like with these like really interesting like stick finger shapes that aren't quite as round as your finger is. And you have to remember, you know, we are three-dimensional, you know, we have curves, our fingers have curves, and so like the whole thing isn't always necessarily going to come into contact with the surface. It's something I have to remember to explain to the younger kids that I teach. You don't want to press down too hard or it's going to get kind of sticky. And I'm going to kind of like round out my corners while still kind of maintaining a good shape here. So for this sculpture, obviously the dough isn't going to hold its own shape. So I have a covered, this is a ceramic, just like cereal bowl, and I have it here covered with wax paper. So we're going to actually, to get this sort of three-dimensional form, we're going to actually drape our handprints over the bottom of the bowl, and you can actually put the whole thing in the oven. And it's really important to make sure that you have an oven-safe bowl for this part, because you don't want to use plastic that might melt or anything else. That would not be good. Alright, so I'm going to kind of let that sit there while I do my other hand. I'm just kind of getting rid of the lines from the other kind of pieces of clay that I used. Sorry, dough. And again, you're going to want your dough slab to be a little bit bigger than your handprint, so I'm going to need a little bit more here. So I'm going to kind of let's get in there. You want the thickness to be between a 1/2 inch and 1/4 inch. Actually a little bit thicker is better. This mixture is going to be pretty much the way that it is. It's not going to rise. So if you want it to be more three-dimensional, you can make it a little bit thicker. And as you can see, the first time I did this, I had some left over. So I made a little flower impression. And you can also just kind of make shapes with your knife. And it holds its three-dimensional shape pretty well. Alright. So I'm just going to continue to trace the outline of my hand. The Community Art Partnership is now starting to offer these online drop-in classes on our Facebook Live page, which is really exciting because now we can reach people at home. And as you can see, I'm at home. So I'm just going to make sure I get this space between my fingers, and I'm actually going to kind of spread these out a little bit more. My other two fingers are getting kind of close together. I'm getting kind of relaxed, so they're just kind of closing in a little bit. And for this project, you want to make sure that you have enough dough, because I'm going to interlace my fingers together on the sculpture. Alright, so now I'm going to trim a little bit of the length off because my fingers aren't really that long. And I'm going to take a little bit of extra water that I have in this dish here and just kind of smooth in the edges so I don't have super sharp edges. I'm going for kind of a realistic sculpture here. Alright, that looks pretty good. I'm just going to carefully take it off my surface, and it's going to stretch a little bit. Now I'm going to kind of weave my fingers together. And the good thing about this medium is that you can kind of mold it back together again if it sort of loses its shape. Alright, and now I'm going to take my extra dough and make kind of another shape. I did a heart for the first time. This time I'm going to try and do something a little bit different. Be more of like a star or a flower shape. And you can kind of get a little bit creative with your shape at this point. The thing I like about sculpting is that literally anything can be a texture tool. You can use rocks or flowers or just like the random items that you find around the house, like literally anything will make an imprint. Alright, so now the next step will be to put these on a baking sheet and bake them in the oven at 200 degrees Fahrenheit for about 2 hours. So I'm going to grab the baking sheet and put these in the oven. You want to make sure that you've got wax paper on your baking sheet as well. And then the last thing you want to do is make sure that you clean up. So I'm going to collect all of my leftover materials. I'm going to put my extra flour back in my flour container. I'm going to take my tools and wash them with some dish soap and some warm water. And the easy part here is sort of stack like everything so you can see. And then this is an easy part. I just gotta take my wax paper, and that's like the majority of the mess. So I can just throw that away. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.